Good morning. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee and Angel Wallace Productions. Today is Wednesday. It is the 14th of August, 2024. It is now 9:11 a.m. here in sunny Reno, Nevada. It is 67 degrees and fair. I'd like to give a shout out to some of our new members. It's exciting. We have Jigsy, Calvin White 17, R64707, Gzite 36, Unacceptable Conditions, Myosotis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Myosotis 7, C16 Hughes, and Nani Q. Welcome to the family. I'm excited. Thank you for being here with us. Well, today we're going to go back into the Phoenix Journals. And God has some very important words to tell us. So let's get started. I hope your morning is going great. Okay, recording number 1, Sananda, Sunday, October the 29th, 1989. 9:11 a.m., year 3, day 074. Now, isn't that ironic? It says 9:11 there, and my time was 9:11. Coincidence? It never ceases to amaze me. Sananda present, that we might continue in our narrative regarding the dark side of existence. I would say at onset, that it is most unfortunate that man can go even beyond that which is acceptable unto Lucifer in heinous activity. It goes well beyond good or bad. Evil can reach into those activities which even pulls Lucifer into rebellion, and has done so. And you will find, if you could but see into these invisible dimensions, that there are millions of humans acting in such vile manner that they are not desired by the dark brotherhood either. Just as things are done in the name of Christ, likewise things are done in the name of Satan, which go beyond that which is relative or acceptable to Satan. The balance is so far shifted that the evil which feeds upon itself moves beyond definition. And for this reason, are we writing this journal? This horrendous trend shall reach into and within all beingness and blight the senses of man. Further, it is so insidious that it will gain such momentum while protected under your own constitution that man in mass will be staggered by satanic presence. Man can somehow handle emotionally an enemy that sets forth to steal, oppress, or even kill. Man cannot emotionally comprehend vileness, which strikes for no reason and without warning. Further, man in general will refuse to look at it until it is too late. The churches who preach Christianity will require members to refuse to even look at or read anything pertaining to Satan or evil. And while ones are so hiding their faces, it shall overcome the masses. Ignorance can never heal nor cure. Only through truthful knowledge of your enemy can you hope to rise above the problem and into the cure. It further shows how little faith the church clubs have in the God and Christ energies they proclaim to follow. If there was belief in truth, then all would stand strong against such actions instead of hiding faces while your children are destroyed and murdered. And you have further become in fear of your own babies, and rightfully so, for you allow of them to control you instead of being the example that would give you both strength and freedom. It will not get better until you do something positive to change of the circumstances. We see no probability of that action manifesting. It only happens to somebody else. Let there be no mistaking my words. The Christ sanctions no blood sacrifices. None. Not even the killing of the rodents in sacrifice unto the lighted God of life is acceptable. He wants not your murdered victims done in his name. It brings pain to see his children do such heinous acts and then pronounce it to be in his name. Ye cannot cleanse yourselves by the blood of any other, not even thine own. Not a Christ, not a lamb, not a goat, nor a pig. Ye defile all that is wondrous and beauteous by the killing and bloodletting of any of God's creatures, even unto the slaughtering of plants and trees given forth to give unto you life. And ye produce the same idea unto your children by drinking of the vine and pronouncing it as the blood of Christ. I sicken at such. Could you not come into the love and truth of the Christ teachings and the laws of God and creation? Nay, ye kneel and drink of Christ's blood and eat of Christ's flesh. Can ye not live in memory and following of Christ's way instead of the mutilation of his representative physical body? You sit in your lovely hovels and pronounce that voodoo and pagan rituals have moved into your nests. You have brought them within. You have allowed yourselves the titillation of the obscene and vulgar and called it adult entertainment. Then the adult entertainment gets boring and so commonplace that you cast the vulgar to your children and you progress to the pornographic. And while you piddle into your important life progress and success in worldly manner, your children turn to their peers and the latest rock groups, and finally, while you are not in notice, onto heavy metal and Satan worship, where evil is openly touted and sanctioned. The children can see the lie of that which you do under the guise of Christian. The children can see the lie of that which you do under the guise of Christian. They have a tendency to turn unto what they perceive as truth of the matter. If you believe me not, ask your children. How did it happen in America? You should have heard the alarm ringing in your 60s decade when the drug use moved into epidemic dimension. The practices began mostly in your western area and rapidly moved eastward. And you expected the police departments to maintain order instead of keeping your own responsibilities further. Now, some 3 decades later, you are the parents, and what of your children? If you take a hit of drugs or a bit of booze, who is fooling who? You doom your children to a far worse fate than you encountered, for drugs of today are instantly addicting, and if enjoyed long enough, become a part of the satanic worship scene. It was planned that way, and it is working to perfection. You think you're a shock-proof? If the things I relate to you in this journal do not shock you, then may God please have mercy upon your soul. And yes, I'm going to paint some most vivid pictures of truth. I hope they make you sick enough to vomit, for if you do not wake up and attend this problem, you will lose a generation of children, either to the disease itself or victims in murder at the hands of these evil ones, or both. I am going to relay things which my scanners show are already known about your place and can be documented in your earth manner. I will begin in California, for that is where the early epidemic began. Let me relate to you what was said by the leaders of your police department in a major California city and became record in documentation. Witchcraft was becoming an increasingly recalcitrant problem by the early 1970s. and there was widespread evidence of animal mutilations being perpetrated in ritualistic manner as prescribed by the satanic guidebooks. Animals, mostly dogs, were being skinned and the blood drained from them. The blood is put into special shaped cauldrons, mixed with what you refer to as LSD, and then used as a drink during rites, ceremonies, or what you call innocent little parties and groupie sessions. The remains, if there are any, are then buried in some public place where they will be uncovered, but without evidence to track back into source. Half the game is to do these things, half them found out, and get away with it. And one of the most dandy and delicious experiences is to skin the animals alive. Now, are you ready, you shockless ones? The biggie started in 1988 is to take babies and young children and skin them alive. Oh, you don't believe me? You better put on your bifocals, my dear children, now, instantly. And where could these cults begin? Up any canyon or rural area in communes where ones would be accepted without question, given so-called love and understanding, given drugs, initiation into sexual unity. Ultimately, blind devotion was poured forth on the leaders. Leaders? Yes. How about Charles Manson, Jim Jones, and so many others that you would be mentally boggled at the hordes under your noses? Now, these youngsters would gather into groups and live in the most primitive way you can imagine, just short distances from the most affluent neighborhoods in the country, indulging in the most heinous acts of sexual deviation, pagan ceremonies, and rites which defy imagination. And I use the term pagan ill-advisedly, for no pagan groups on our monitors would ever act in such a manner unless openly satanic in origin. The true pagan of the original earth peoples lived in balance and harmony with God and creation. Evil even took that beauteous legacy from them and destroyed it. Oh, then it is the drug scene. No, it is a part of it, only a part of it. Some of the procedures have little or no relationship to drug usage. You had things going on which were called things such as kiss-ins, right on your public beaches. Hundreds of people gather, the music is loud and mesmerizing, and soon the masses are as one whole, in swaying motion, glassy-eyed and totally transported, without any use of drugs. These things would occur in midday at concerts anywhere and any time. Some participants would openly thrust off their clothing and indulge in open sexual activities of all manners and hardly be noticed except to cause others to do likewise. These ones, friends, believe in the dark spirit world and will readily tell you the devil is most real indeed to them. These were also your children or you yourself. Any memories being triggered? Well, that was a long way back in the 60s, and things are different now, you will say. Yes, they most certainly are different. It is organized and fully operational. The satanic forces were only hooking you back then. They defiled the true New Age truth of light and goodness and corrupted the term just as love as a term was corrupted into evil. The leaders were and are usually high-ranking satanic leaders. They will usually go so far as to call themselves the Prince of Light returned, the Christ, and even God. They not only proclaim openly, but fully believe what they teach, that worship is through sexual deviations and they practice all of them. The perversions are so degrading that I shall not describe them herein, for my scribe is having a very difficult time with this material. She too is a mother of several and grandmother to 9. She too placed her head in the bucket of sand and prayed it would go away. It does not, blessed ones, only gets more vile and more intense in actions. So you go to your Christian or other doctrine churches who teach truth and goodness and think you are safe. Evil invades these institutions with tempting ego fulfillment and monetary gain, etc., and eventually, if not recognized and halted, becomes the most evil in fact. Where would you strike first if you wanted to control the world? In the place where people feel the most secure, of course. In the congregations and gifting of the bakers and swaggarts of the world. Right in the Vatican at the feet of the Pope, or in Uganda's vineyards, right under your noses and in front of your eyes, where you least expect it. The leaders in truth are finally swayed and toppled, the parishioners disillusioned and open for the attack, for they have been betrayed. It is the fastest way to get mankind to turn from God and truth, for man functions in mass groups. Well, you might say, Sananda, you speak of things in the 60s and 70s. It couldn't happen now. Oh, what about 15 murdered people in Matamoros, Mexico, across from Texas in April of 1989? One man who participated in the murders actually carried a victim's ear in his pocket for good luck. In 1972, a man was apprehended in LA who carried human knuckles in his pocket. He later casually announced he could not be touched because he acted only in a religious manner, and religions are protected by the U.S. Constitution. And he openly pronounced that his group, the church, regularly killed people, and he himself had not only sacrificed a male, chosen at random off the street, but had eaten his heart. He was then invincible to all attackers, even the police. Explain, how could this come to be? You are in the time of the reign of evil, just as prophesied. It is a frenzied time for mankind, and he hungers for truth. He is starving for fulfillment. He is desperately searching and longing for balance. Now, many of these spiritually hungry have gone to churches and haven't found the answer to that hunger, for they simply find more organized clubs pursuing power and taking of their money for all manner of worldly building and causes. They are stressed, and their lives are falling apart, for they have broken all the laws of God and creation and have found no peace. The churches have rewritten the rules to allow for a perversion of sexual behaviors right into the marriage beds and sanctioned aggressive greed in it for the right cause. In the continued searching and alienation of self-peace, these suffering ones who hunger for love and compassionate camaraderie turn away from the traditional and into the other groups in hopeful expectation of acceptance and enfolding love. So someone comes along and offers them that feeling of belonging and a sense of being loved, and they fall for it. Of course, there are other reasons, but longing for acceptance, approval, and a place in the world is what is most important as a portion of the insane and unreasoned direction many are taking into the supernatural. And then comes along the ones who proclaim knowledge of truth and disallow all spirits as evil, all cosmic beings as evil. And at the same time, these same ones get in the pulpits and claim Christ and Jesus, God and angels speak to them in goodness. Brothers, you cannot have one without the other. Will you never come into understanding? If you have evil, you must have good. and the reverse. It is your choice of selection which is at stake, not existence of these beings and energies, but rather, who do you attend? The point is to turn from evil into truth, godness, and light, not to ignore evil and hope it will somehow go away, for it will not. It will grow like the cancer it is and blight the entire of the planet. Oh yes, the leaders will tell the good church people that this very journal is of darkness and to cast it aside and burn the author if you can find him. Well, you crucified me once. Shall we go for it again? How can you heal a sickened world if you do not diagnose the illness? To diagnose the illness, you must look very, very closely at the cause. You put on all the protective gear necessary. You call the shield of God and the Christ energy about you, and you look closely and most carefully at the disease. Then and only then can you even hope to find a cure. So be it. Let's quote a bit. I will utilize some local information and quote from a book by one Hal Lindsey, Satan is Alive and Well on Planet Earth. This will give Dharma's bit of a chance to settle, for it is most difficult to pen this type of information with no backup. The Satanic Age. Are we in a new age of Satan? Many people would be revolted by the so-called churches which openly worship Satan. The most widely publicized establishment of this kind is the First Church of Satan in San Francisco, headed by Anton LaVey, the high priest. The bald, narrow-eyed LaVey was quoted as saying, "The Satanic Age started in 1966. That's when God was proclaimed dead. The Sexual Freedom League came into prominence, and the hippies developed as a free sex culture." Now, Mr. Lindsey was quoting from Arthur Lyons' The Second Coming, Satanism in America, New York, Dodd, Mean and Company, 1970. Satanic cults are expanding in every major city in the United States. We have received reports from other California cities which show the existence of 3 satanic groups in Berkeley, 2 of them communes, 1 in Big Sur, 1 in Venice, 5 in San Francisco, and 1 in San Diego. The number of satanic circles gathered in Los Angeles County is indeterminate. This was before 1972. So I shall cease giving Mr. Lindsey's references, for you can easily obtain his book and look them all up for yourselves. I would, however, prefer you wait until you finish this document and really get busy and find supportive information. Now, some of the churches of Satan are brazenly open, such as LaVey's establishment, an impressive 3-story Victorian home, while others are camouflaged by storefronts or meeting halls. In Europe, satanic masses are held in ruined churches and monasteries. But we should not be deceived by creaking castles or shadowy figures in musty rooms. Satanism is not just an old world phenomenon. Arthur Lyons says Satanism is not only present in Europe, but in the United States as well. In fact, the United States probably harbors the fastest growing and most highly organized body of Satanists in the world. Indeed, for you preserve your right to worship as you please under the protection of your Constitution. In the churches entangled in Satan worship, the rites are opposite from those of a Christian church. Every desecration of Christianity is emphasized, from the upside-down cross to the flagrant use of sex and sexual stimuli. In Hollywood, the altar was a glass tank filled with formaldehyde containing the body of a dead baby. Lyons reported that the high priest had a hypnotic effect upon a teenage girl. The ritual in which she became involved was so debasing, he could not finish the describing of it. And we are reminded of the sordid spectacle of the girls who were mesmerized by Charles Manson. In a personal interview with a former Manson family member, I found they indulged in all types of Satanism and witchcraft. Manson was said to have had visions and magic powers. And there were stories of his being physically transported from one end of the Spawn Ranch to the other. Group sexual experience and indulgence of some witch covens was commonly practiced by the Manson cult. The twisted reversal of Christianity was evident. Manson was called God, Jesus, and Satan by his followers. And after Manson's conviction for the 7 Tate LaBianca murders, 5 members of his family, girls with their heads shaved to prove their loyalty to their leader, led a trek through Hollywood on their knees in witness to the second coming of Manson. Witches aren't Satanists, aren't they? Let us study that just a bit farther. The ones who think they practice white witchcraft and simply fiddle and toy in the game of it are dupes and tools. The unwitting are even more pathetic than the intentional, for they not only fall themselves, but pull other innocent victims into the traps. Oh yes, there are victims. That is another lie thrown at you. There most certainly are victims of such teachings. For you must understand that which began as honor and reverence unto God in the native manner has been stolen and corrupted into tools for the evil ones. And that, dear ones, is the point. Corrupt all that is good until the good is no longer credible. The steps which separate witchcraft and Satanism are almost invisible. Their histories, rites, and followers are intermingled. Statistics of witch covens given today would be out of date in a week. And as far back as your early 60s, it could not be documented as to the number of covens, as not all covens were even known to one another. But the fascination with the fortune-telling, spell-casting, and fun of the game was moving into full swing, getting ready to relabel it the New Age movement. And a decade later, it was recognized and publicized that it was already undeniable that the rising addiction to mysticism had swelled to a veritable epidemic. And most ones were sucked in innocently enough, for all were searching to find themselves and began to go within, open up those chakras and chant mantras, and be. Most ones who are in pure intent of individual balancing with the God within are innocent and could do such wondrous good. However, the misdirection of all being okay in action, if it hurts not another, is erroneous and dastardly in concept. It is not okay. If you pull away from the laws of God and creation, it is not okay. Further, in pronouncing such, you have destined more pain and hurt upon your fellow man, for in the seeking of peace they shall be pulled farther from any semblance of peace. More and more often in murder trials, you will find the suspects proclaiming possession by the devil, and very often the murdered victim will be the one of the group participating with the murderers themselves. In France, there are well over 75,000 proclaimed sorcerers gleaning from willing seekers, well above 300 to 400 million each year. In Germany, well, in Frankfurt alone, for these numbers can be checked, there are tens of thousands who actively believe in witches and seek them out. And the problem is also epidemic in Great Britain as masses of people are turning from traditional religions toward black magic. This tells a story in itself about the traditional religions. It is simply that evil has been allowed to corrupt all corners of your lives, including the very doctrines upon which you base your moral truth. The attraction of witchcraft and mysticism is understandably enough. One's become disenchanted with the organized, traditional experience and seek other outlets. And most began by discounting the predictions of the astrologers and mystics as fun. But as truth of the psychic predictions become manifest, as they will, if by not but individual expectation alone, the seeker gets hooked on the maybe it is real, and this is a religion which allows, even demands, participation and activity within the group. The suckers will be told and shown that witchcraft, mysticism, etc., is actually a return to nature, a worship of the natural gods, as opposed to the chrome and glass gods you find in society. If it feels good, go for it. And just be becomes the chanting battle cry. Allow and love, in any manner you choose, fornication, adultery, sodomy, and endless other manner of behavior. All the while, the unsuspecting is being set up for one big guilt trip when the truth dawns upon him and he finds he has AIDS or addiction to all manner of activities and substances. Have a little pot to open your senses so you can experience the cosmos in truth. Ah, yes, and destroy your thinking mind, your memory, and all reasonably good relationships through idiocy, foolishness, and irresponsibility. Sananda is a hard, old, outdated teacher. I am the Christ, original teacher, and make no mistake thereof. Man has defiled my very label, and that God truth of beauty and wondrous abundance. No, I shall stand in thy corners and be cast aside no longer. So be it, and mark of my words this day, ye shall pull from these evil ways, or the transition is going to be most uncomfortable for you who wait and see. You know the actions are unacceptable, for truth is inherent in all human. If you choose to live by the lie, ye shall die by the lie. Truth in light does not demand, take or force it, neither defiles nor judges. It is in total in forgiveness and receiving, never does it negatively exploit. Check and see where your allegiance resides. It has reached such a sad proportion within your society that if you have a single person in their late teens who think enough of their own value to still be a virgin, they are ridiculed, harassed, and persecuted. Think most closely about these lessons being given herein. I denounce no man. I do denounce the evil behavior in man, for you are created in the image of God the Father, and you mock the gift. So be it, for the choosing is at hand. This scribe would deem to stand alone and vulnerable, for so few will dare to allow of our truth to be put to ledger. Nay, these ones who come from our realms in truth for this purpose shall be tended most carefully. 'Tis mankind who cannot realize how alone he stands, naked and stripped in his blind helplessness. I speak now of not good or bad, for those are labels and perceptions of man. I speak of evil and godness, and you shall be in the choosing of which you will pursue, for it is your individual choice alone. We are far, far from finished, Dharma. Let us have respite, please. I place my seal upon these writings, and I stand responsible for this which is being brought forth. It must be so, that my workers and scribes also hear and see the truth herein, for my opinions are not necessarily the opinions of the management of this keyboard. Peace be with you. I am Sananda.